I got myself a real pigeon here.
I think acting would make me happy. It would give me everything I needed out of life to be successful. And those things was to make a lot of money, become very popular, and be very influential and motivational to young black kids.
Do you remember Jim Kelly? The black man with the proud afro who once stood shoulder to shoulder with the legend Bruce Lee and made the whole world take notice. In the 1970s, Hollywood was a playground for white actors. Black men were only cast as criminals or servants. Jim Kelly appeared and shattered the mold, punching straight through prejudice. He became a symbol of strength, freedom, and black pride. The press called him America's new black martial arts star. Studios chased after him, audiences cheered for him. Kelly was on the verge of becoming a legend. But just a few years later, Jim Kelly disappeared. No scandals, no accusations, no farewell. Hollywood went silent. And so did Jim Kelly. What made a rising star suddenly vanish from the movie map? Was it racism disappointment? Or did he simply choose to walk away before being consumed? Let's find out in this video. The final secret will shock you. On May 5, 1946, in Paris, Kentucky, a boy named Jim Kelly was born. But Paris was far from romantic. It was the deep South, still soaked in racial segregation. Signs reading "For Whites" only still hung over diner doors, and suspicious looks toward black people were a daily routine. In that world, Jim Kelly grew up as an outsider. He had to learn how to survive before he could learn how to live. His father worked in a factory, his mother ran a small service for Navy personnel. They were poor, but they never bowed their heads. Kelly was often mocked by classmates for the color of his skin. Instead of hiding, he fought back with action. He exercised, ran, and trained his body like armor against the world. At Bourbon County High School, Jim Kelly became a sports phenomenon. He played football, track, basketball, even tennis, and in every sport, he came out on top. His achievements earned him an athletic scholarship to the University of Louisville, a huge step for a young black man in the mid-1960s. But America still wasn't ready to embrace successful black men. During one football practice, his coach publicly mocked a black player, calling Kelly a word everyone knew should never be spoken. Kelly stood frozen. Everything he believed in effort, talent, fairness collapsed in an instant. That night, he packed his bag and left campus. No letters, no goodbyes. I realized that if they could look down on someone just because of skin color, then I didn't belong there. In that moment, Jim Kelly walked away from the American dream and began his journey as a free man. And then karate entered his life, like fate. After dropping out of college, Kelly stumbled into a small dojo in Lexington. For the first time, he found a place without color lines, only sweatshouts and respect for those who could fall and rise again. He began studying Shorin-ryu karate, a traditional Okinawan style focused on speed and self-control. Under masters like Parker Shelton, Nate Patton, and Gordon Doversola, Kelly trained to exhaustion 8 hours a day with broken bones and swollen legs, but he never stopped. Through karate, he rediscovered what society had tried to take from him: confidence and dignity. Karate became his breath, his way of existing in an America still divided by race. No one could have guessed that this young man obsessed with martial arts was about to step into the world of Hollywood. The peak of martial arts, from dojo to silver screen. In 1971, Jim Kelly stepped into the ring at the Long Beach International Karate Championships, the most prestigious tournament in America at the time. At 25 years old, with a cold expression and lightning-fast kicks, he was the only black fighter among hundreds of opponents, and he won the world middleweight title. That victory was more than a golden trophy. It was a punch straight into prejudice. From a college dropout scarred by racism, Kelly became the #1 martial artist in America. He opened his own dojo in California, where he didn't just teach technique, but also pride. Many of his students were actors, athletes, and celebrities, drawn to Kelly's aura of freedom, a man both fierce and calm. No one knew that inside this small room, the first black martial arts star in Hollywood history was being forged. A fateful encounter with Enter the Dragon. In 1973, Warner Brothers launched the international martial arts film Enter the Dragon, with Bruce Lee as the heart of the project. When a supporting actor was dismissed midway, the team searched for a replacement. The only requirement was simple. He had to be real. He had to fight, and he had to have presence. Someone in the martial arts community mentioned Jim Kelly, and he was invited to audition. Kelly walked into the room tall, broad-shouldered, with his afro haloed in light and eyes sharp as blades. He didn't perform. He simply said a short line and gave a half smile. That was enough. Bruce Lee nodded. He had something Hollywood could never teach the aura of a man who's fought for real, said Robert Klaus, director of Enter the Dragon. When Enter the Dragon premiered, audiences around the world were swept up in the storm named Bruce Lee. But beside that Asian legend, Jim Kelly shone with his own flame. As Williams, a proud and free black martial artist, Kelly wasn't just fighting on screen. He was playing himself, a black man standing tall in a white world. The character of Williams became a symbol of black strength at a time when American cinema rarely allowed them to be heroes. Jim Kelly became a cultural icon, the man who brought the spirit of black power into martial arts cinema. Bruce was so fond of Jim Kelly that he wanted to invite him to collaborate on another film. He said, "Jim, we're going to do another film. Will you come back to Hong Kong with me and star in it?" But sadly, Bruce passed away before he could keep that promise. In 1974, Jim Kelly broke through even further. Black Belt Jones hit theaters, an action film full of funk, speed, and swagger. That same year came Three the Hard Way, starring Kelly, Fred Williamson, and Jim Brown. Three black men taking on a white supremacist organization. Across America, black audiences flocked to theaters. For the first time, they weren't the ones being chased. They were the ones holding the guns, the ones who won. Kelly went on to star in Hot Potato, Black Samurai, and Death Dimension. Even when the scripts were simple, his image remained powerful. A black man who was strong, cool, and unbreakable. The tall afro, the spinning kick like a blade. The cold smile, everything about him became legendary. He was the face of black kung fu. At that peak, Jim Kelly seemed to have it all. Fame, freedom, and a place in history. But he didn't know that Hollywood only loves symbols while they're useful. And when the trend fades, the torch they once carried is left to die in the dark they once conquered. The weight of fame and the shadow of Bruce Lee. After Enter the Dragon, Jim Kelly became one of the most sought-after faces in Hollywood. But along with the glory came a heavy shadow, the shadow of Bruce Lee. The media constantly called him the Black Bruce Lee, a label that sounded flattering but was steeped in bias. To the press, Kelly was never just himself. He was always the replacement, never the original. To Kelly, it wasn't a compliment. He respected Bruce Lee, deeply saw him as an older brother, but being branded the black version made him feel erased. "I don't want to be the Black Bruce Lee. I want to be Jim Kelly," he said, cool, calm, and firm. Later, he admitted that what he didn't like about Enter the Dragon was that he never had the chance to show his own style. It was Bruce Lee's film, and although he deeply respected him, Kelly couldn't fully display his true technique.
What I really didn't like about Enter the Dragon was that I didn't really get a chance to do my thing.
When Hollywood turned its back, by the late 1970s, Hollywood was changing. The once explosive blaxploitation era, the genre that had made black action heroes into cultural icons, began to fade. What had once been a roar of resistance after the civil rights movement was now being condemned by white critics as cheap violence and profiting off black pain. Major studios like Warner Brothers, MGM, and American International Pictures, once eager investors in the genre, all pulled out. The stars they had once celebrated, Pam Grier, Fred Williamson, Jim Brown, and Jim Kelly, were suddenly left behind in a new Hollywood. The fall of blaxploitation wasn't just about box office trends. It reflected a political shift within Hollywood itself. As the conservative Reagan era rose, the film industry returned to white savior heroes Sylvester Stallone in Rocky, and Rambo, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan and The Terminator, and black actors. They went back to being sidekicks, clowns, or the first to die in horror films. Jim Kelly felt that change more deeply than anyone. After Black Belt Jones and Three the Hard Way, he expected bigger, more meaningful roles. But the scripts that came were the same cliches. The tough black guy, the smart-talking fighter, but empty inside. "I could tell what they wanted after reading just a few pages," Kelly said in a 1982 interview. "They didn't want an actor. They wanted a symbol, and I didn't want to be their symbol anymore. He started rejecting most offers. He refused to play the poor black cop or characters who existed, only to make the white hero look good. In an interview with Ebony magazine in 1978, he said bluntly, "If the role has no soul, I won't take it. I don't need the money that bad to make myself a joke." That defiance got him labeled as difficult. Some directors, including Robert Clouse and producer Fred Weintraub, reportedly warned studios that Jim Kelly has an attitude. Rumors spread that he had been quietly added to Hollywood's unofficial blacklist, a shadow list, where actors who spoke up or refused to conform were denied work. No documents ever confirmed it, but the truth was clear. After 1978, Jim Kelly's name vanished from casting lists. The 1980s brought a new era of action cinema: Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Top Gun, all exploding with white male leads. The black pioneers of the 1970s were sidelined. Fred Williamson turned to independent filmmaking to survive. Pam Grier stepped away, and Jim Kelly chose silence. He didn't fall from grace. He didn't cause scandal. He simply withdrew quietly, proudly. Amid the Hollywood blockbusters, there was no longer room for a black fighter who spoke the truth. And like so many icons swallowed by the system, they once challenged Jim Kelly disappeared. No retirement speech, no complaints, just a silent exit, carrying with him the dignity of a man who knew he no longer belonged there. A different life, from fighter to tennis player. After leaving Hollywood, Jim Kelly didn't drown in alcohol or despair, like many forgotten stars. In the 1980s, while his peers were still struggling to cling to minor roles, Kelly appeared somewhere no one expected: the tennis court. Tennis became his second martial art after karate. He began playing seriously in the late 1970s, when his movie career was already in free fall. By age 40, Kelly was competing in the USTA Senior Men's Circuit, the tournament system for veteran players of the United States Tennis Association. He even ranked in California's top 10. Commentators were astonished by his thunderous serve and his footwork still lightning fast like his fighting days. One sports journalist joked, "The ball flies off his racket like it's afraid of being kicked." No one on the court knew that the tall, curly-haired man, nearly 6'2", had once shared the screen with Bruce Lee, and Kelly never mentioned it. He dressed, simply wore a baseball cap, taught children at a local tennis club, and lived off lesson fees and small coaching jobs. Friends said Kelly was remarkably disciplined. He woke up early, exercised, taught tennis, ate healthy, drank no alcohol, smoked nothing. He lived modestly, drove an old Porsche 911, and never bragged about anything. When asked why he chose tennis instead of clinging to Hollywood, he just smiled. On the court, nobody cares who you are. All that matters is whether the ball goes over the net. I like that. To Kelly, tennis wasn't a hobby, it was a way of life. The sport gave him something Hollywood never could: fairness. On the court, there were no black or white players, only skill and discipline. In a rare 2010 interview, he said, "I have no regrets. I had a great time. And now I just want to play tennis, teach kids, and stay healthy." In the 1990s, Jim Kelly settled in San Diego and opened a small tennis club. He named it simply Kelly Tennis Club, offering lessons for teenagers and seniors. No advertising, no social media, no press photos. He almost completely vanished from the public eye for nearly 30 years. When people mentioned him most, younger audiences only remembered the cool black guy from Enter the Dragon, not realizing he was still alive and still training every day. Those who met him in San Diego all said the same thing. He still walked tall, his trademark curls intact, the same half smile and a calm, steady gaze. He was still cool, but in a quieter way, one acquaintance recalled. When the lights of Hollywood went out, Jim Kelly didn't try to chase them. He stepped back into the shadows quietly, as if he had never existed on those blazing posters of the past. Jim Kelly was one of the rare stars of the 1970s the press couldn't exploit for scandal. He didn't fall into drugs like many of his contemporaries, didn't indulge in wild parties, and was never involved in violence or messy affairs. But his spotless image led some to doubt it. Can anyone in Hollywood really have no scandals, they asked. And so the rumors began. The rumors, misunderstandings, and shadows around Jim Kelly, hard to work with Hollywood's most dangerous label. The first and most damaging rumor surfaced right after Enter the Dragon in 1973. Some crew members at Warner Brothers claimed Kelly argued with director Robert Clouse over a scene he felt was unfair to his character. The scene originally showed Kelly's character being killed easily after just a few punches. Kelly objected, wanting to rewrite it so his character could fight on equal ground with the villain. Clouse refused, and Kelly said plainly, "I didn't come here to be decoration." That quote spread across the set and beyond. In the white-dominated Hollywood of the time, a black actor talking back to the director was enough to earn a reputation as difficult, even after Black Belt Jones and 3. The hard way succeeded. Industry papers like Variety and The Hollywood Reporter still described him with the same coded phrase, Jim Kelly, a rising star with a reputation for being strong-minded. In Hollywood, strong-minded was the polite way to say, doesn't take orders. The result of that rumor was concrete. After 1978, his name disappeared from major studio casting lists. No one ever declared a ban on Jim Kelly, but everyone understood. The silent blacklist was real. Jealous of Bruce Lee, the most persistent rumor. When Enter the Dragon became a global phenomenon, Bruce Lee died just weeks before its release. The media soon created a new narrative. Bruce Lee, the gone-too-soon genius, and Jim Kelly, the man who only became famous because of Lee's death. Some American and British tabloids went further, claiming Kelly was jealous of Bruce because his scenes were shortened in the final cut. That rumor persisted for nearly 40 years, until Kelly finally addressed it in a 2010 interview with Salon.com. He said clearly, "Bruce was the only person in Hollywood who treated me as an equal. Without him, I wouldn't be in Enter the Dragon. I respected him deeply and was never jealous." Kelly also revealed that the two had discussed a new film together, where they would play warriors on opposite sides, but the project died when Bruce Lee passed away. After this interview, many Asian martial arts fans publicly apologized on forums, admitting the jealousy rumor was a fabrication by white media. At the time, people who couldn't accept a black star standing as Bruce Lee's equal. Romance with a co-star, a short-lived tabloid tale. In 1975, Jet Magazine and Ebony Digest ran a teasing headline claiming Jim Kelly had a close relationship with a female colleague from 3: The Hard Way. The article didn't name anyone, only hinting that one of the 3 male leads shared chemistry beyond the screen. Other outlets immediately pointed to Kelly, the youngest and most attractive of the trio, with Fred Williamson and Jim Brown. Kelly's reaction was classic silence. A month later, when asked at a press conference, he simply smiled and said, "I've never had time for scandals. I'm too busy training." Reporters laughed, and the story vanished as quickly as it began. No evidence ever surfaced, and Fred Williamson himself confirmed in a 2009 interview Jim was extremely disciplined. He didn't flirt on set. That story was made up. Rumors of bankruptcy and selling his image rights. In the 1980s, as Kelly disappeared from film, financial rumors began. A short Jet magazine piece in 1982 claimed he was struggling and might have to sell personal assets. Later, a small Los Angeles paper reported he had sold the rights to his image to a Japanese martial arts company to keep his dojo afloat. No one ever verified it, and friends later dismissed it outright. He never sold his image, one close friend said. The truth was that Kelly made a modest but steady living teaching tennis and martial arts. He no longer earned royalties from old films, since contracts back then didn't include residuals. Actors were paid only once. Still, he lived simply debt-free and humble. A friend said Jim never wore fancy watches or bragged about cars. He just needed a tennis court and his students. That was enough. After years of applause and camera flashes, he chose a private life so quiet that the world almost forgot he had ever been a movie star. A private life, the man who chose silence. Jim Kelly was married twice. His first marriage to Marilyn Dishman in 1967 was brief, lasting just over a year before quietly ending. At the time, he was still finding his way between dreams of being a fighter and the promise of acting. His second marriage to Marsha Bentley in 1980 became his true home. The two stayed together for more than 30 years. They had one daughter, Sabrina Kelly, but for decades the public hardly knew she existed. No photos, no events, no press appearances together. People often wondered if Kelly was hiding his family to protect them from the media, or if he simply wanted to keep a part of his life untouched by the world. For him, silence seemed to be a form of freedom. In a rare 2010 interview, when asked why he never spoke about his family, Kelly replied, "Because that's the only part of my life I get to keep for myself." In a world where everything is laid bare for the public, that answer sounded like a quiet vow from a man who had lost too much to the spotlight. By the late 2000s, Jim Kelly was still seen regularly at a small tennis court in San Diego. He was tall and strong, as ever, his half-smile unchanged. No one could have guessed that he was about to enter the toughest fight of his life, the final battle, when a warrior falls in silence. In the early 2010s, Kelly was diagnosed with cancer. The type was never publicly confirmed, some say kidney, others prostate. He kept it completely private. Only his wife, Marsha Bentley, and a few close friends knew. On June 29, 2013, Jim Kelly passed away at his home in California at the age of 67. His family confirmed the cause was cancer. Marsha Bentley, the woman who had quietly stood by him for more than 3 decades, released a short statement. Jim passed peacefully. He lived the way he wanted to, strong, quiet, and free. But even in death, rumors followed him. Some martial arts websites claimed he died from choking during exercise, while others said it was a sudden stroke at home. Only after the Los Angeles Times and the Hollywood Reporter published the official news did people learn the truth. He had died of cancer after a long silent struggle. His wife Marsha had to step forward and clarify. There was no choking incident. Jim passed peacefully, surrounded by family. That false rumor, though unintentional, said everything about his life's paradox. He was so quiet that when he died, the world had to invent noise just to make sense of him one last time. The news of his passing shocked fans around the world. Social media flooded with messages of disbelief. One fan wrote, "I thought he was still out there somewhere, just not making movies anymore." For many, Jim Kelly wasn't gone. He had simply stepped away from the screen again, training somewhere, waiting for the right role. But this time, the silence was forever. Major newspapers around the world reported his death. The Hollywood Reporter, Los Angeles Times, The Guardian, and even legendary critic Roger Ebert all published tributes. Ebert wrote, "Jim Kelly was more than an actor. He was a declaration of life, a symbol of a generation of black men who refused to be boxed in." Those articles were quiet, heartfelt, and full of sorrow. Because Jim Kelly's death wasn't just the loss of a man, it marked the end of an era. An era when a black actor could finally stand tall on screen and say, "I don't want to be anyone else. I am myself." Jim Kelly was a legend forgotten in his own time. Not because he lacked talent, not because he failed, but because he was born too soon. The price of being born too soon. If Jim Kelly had lived in today's world, where black actors like Denzel Washington, Michael B. Jordan, and Chadwick Boseman are celebrated as global icons, he might have been a living legend. But in the 1970s, America wasn't ready for a man like him. Jim Kelly was a black man who didn't fit the mold. Too intelligent to obey, too proud to compromise, and too independent to be owned by Hollywood. In an industry still ruled by white faces, he was a contradiction. A black man who was handsome, confident, skilled in martial arts, and refused to bow his head. Hollywood didn't know what to do with a man like that, so it did the easiest thing: it ignored him. When Kelly threw his first kick on screen, he wasn't just fighting the villain in the movie. He was fighting the entire Hollywood system that wanted to keep black men in safe roles. The sidekick, the comic relief, or the one who dies first. He didn't smile to please anyone. He didn't apologize for existing. And that's why in the same film, two icons, Bruce Lee and Jim Kelly, walked away with two opposite destinies. The legacy of a man who needed no applause. Jim Kelly didn't die as a washed-up star. He left the stage like a fighter who knew his match was over. No drama, no spectacle, just a quiet bow to life. And then he was gone. He was the first black man to bring the American kung fu spirit to the screen. But his legacy wasn't in his flying kicks or cool poses. It was in how he lived with pride, dignity, and silence in the face of prejudice. In a Hollywood addicted to noise, he chose to win through stillness. And that stillness made him immortal. Today, every time a black actor stands tall on screen with confidence, every time a fighter enters the ring without needing permission to be themselves, you can still see a trace of Jim Kelly. He doesn't need a statue. He is the statue for all those who were never given one. In the end, Jim Kelly didn't need Hollywood to prove his worth. The way he left calm, proud, and without a single complaint was his final strike, the last move of a warrior who had already won in silence.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.